I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning around. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is Tuesday, December 17th, 2013. I'm sure a lot of you are probably surprised to be hearing me because you all thought I'd be getting surgery today, as I talked about last week, but the date got moved up by a few days, so it'll be later in the week. So Thursday and Friday I'll be off this week and recovering from surgery, and hopefully by next Tuesday I'll be back in shape to get back on air. I know after Christmas of next week, I know the 27th, I'll be broadcasting live with my good friend Christopher Everard. Make sure you tune in for that. I was on his show yesterday. In case you guys didn't get a chance to hear it, you can go over to the archive section over on truthfrequencyradio.com, and you can listen. And by the way, I want to say something. You've heard me say here and there on air, hey, you know, if you feel like donating, feel free to donate to Truth Frequency or whatnot. A lot of people, I don't think they realize, you can donate, and I urge you to do so, but you should also just buy, if you're going to, say you're going to donate like $50, why don't you buy a subscription? Then you have access to the high-quality archives of not only my show, but everybody else's show on this network. And this network is amazing. Chris and Cherie have done a magnificent job of just building a huge network of truth and information. And it's not just a couple days a week. It's 24/7 broadcasting, whether it's a live show or a rebroad of something that was played maybe earlier in the week. It doesn't matter. There's 24-hour broadcasting on this network. So Christmas gift, somebody that maybe wants to, they're starting to look, but they don't know where to look. What would be a good gift for that person? Well, get them a gift certificate, right? You could, maybe I'll buy them an Amazon.com gift card. No. Go buy them the perfect gift. Buy them the membership to Truth Frequency Radio. You can get all the archives for all the shows in high quality. Download them CD quality, I may add. And yeah, I put my archives up on YouTube and stuff, and up on Federal Jack, but there's a ton of other shows on this network, and not everybody has the opportunity or the availability to do what I do with Federal Jack or with YouTube. And they depend on their archives on Truth Frequency. And their voice should be heard just as much as mine or anybody else's. So, you want to give a good gift, give a membership to Truth Frequency Radio. Trust me, it's worth it. Again, there's a ton of awesome hosts on this network. A ton. And I don't plug this network enough. Chris and Cherie were gracious enough to give me an awesome home here And as I often do, and I always say this, I'm so into the information, I always forget to give plugs to the network or anything. And you know what? You want to talk about a gracious guy? Chris has never called me and said, hey, you don't plug the station coming in and out of breaks or anything like that. Never once has he ever complained to me. Not once. And anytime I've ever had a problem with something, he's always been on top of it. So thank you, Chris. Say it right on air. Thank you, Sheree. You guys are awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, if you do feel just like donating, maybe you already have a membership, feel free to do that. But if you don't already have a membership and you were contemplating donating, kill two birds with one stone, get a membership. I'm telling you, it's worth it. It really is. The other two things I want to plug really quick before I get into the broadcast tonight. It's important that I plug these two things, okay? Neither of them are for me, again, but this is important. One of them is the Global Road to Ruin Through Education, and you're going to hear Charlotte Iserby talking about that coming up. I'm going to air the interview. In fact, I might even air it. If I have enough time, I'll get it together and see if I can air it Friday while I'm recovering from surgery, but if not, perhaps I'll be able to get into it next week. But I did an interview with her about Common Core and this specifically, the Global Road to Ruin Through Education. And it's a DVD box set that her and a bunch of other researchers have put together, and it's really well done. It's professionally done. If you go over to federaljack.com, I have it posted over there. In fact, right now, if you go over to the chat room for the Truth Frequency Radio chat, I'll throw it in there for everybody. If they want to see the link, you can see how to order it from there. But this isn't from me. This is from Charlotte Iserby, the author of Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and a bunch of other researchers. You can order it through Charlotte. She's got the DVD box set. All the information is available over on federaljack.com. In fact, I'll give you the name of the company and everything in her website really quick in case you want to contact her about it. It's $40 plus $5 shipping and handling, so it's $45 for a 7 DVD box set plus 1 CD with submissions from other speakers and researchers and stuff. Not to mention just what's on the other 7 DVDs. So I mean, this is a huge thing, and $45 ain't much for a 7-disc plus 1 CD box set. So you can, if you want, you can just send them a check over to 3D Research Company and send it to 3D Research Company, 519 River Road, Dresden, Maine, 04342. Or you can just email Charlotte over at dumbdown00@yahoo.com. That's dumb, DUMBDOWN 00@yahoo.com. Charlotte is an awesome lady, and she will get back to you in time. I promise. She gets with everybody for every order. She's just an awesome individual. You've heard her on here before, and I will be airing that next interview with her soon. Okay, now, number 3. And then on to the information, I promise. Number 3. If you want a copy of Me and Lee by Judith Farry Baker, I have signed limited edition copies of them available. You can order them right from federaljack.com. If you go right to the front page, or if you're on one of the other pages, you'll see right on the side, it says Special JFK 50th Anniversary Signed Limited Edition Copy of Me and Lee. And it's got a picture of the book. If you click on that, it brings you to the page where you can order it from. Through PayPal, all secure. It's not like through some backwards thing that I have set up on my server. It's, not that, PayPal watches everything you do, but whatever. It's through PayPal, so I have nothing to do with your credit card information or anything like that. Once the order goes through, I get an email, and then obviously you put your shipping information in, and I'll ship you the copy of the book. I have 2.5, a little less than 2.5 boxes of books left. I brought them back with me from my road trip to Dallas. Judith, I'm selling them for her. She asked me to sell them for her so she didn't have to try to ship them back to Europe when she left the States. So these were the last of the books that she had for sale while she was here in the States. They were all signed. They were signed on the 22nd of November, 50th anniversary, so they are signed, special limited edition copies. Once these are gone, I don't have any more autographed copies. You can still go to Trine Day and buy them from Trine Day, but they're not autographed editions. These, right now, I'm selling for her, whatever she's got left. They're autographed editions, and it's $30, and that includes shipping. So it's the same price that you'd pay at Trine Day, but you get the autographed edition, and I throw in, I have a couple copies of Wake Up Call left. It's a New World Order documentary put together by a friend of mine. He goes by the name John Nada, and he knows who he is. Good filmmaker, just brilliant individual, all-around great human being. And at the reference, John Nada is the character in They Live. Anyway, I have a couple copies of Wake Up Call I throw in with each book, plus a Truth Frequency Radio bumper sticker designed by Chris Gio. They're really awesome. They say silence is consent underneath it. It's just truthfrequencyradio.com. So I throw in a free truthfrequencyradio.com bumper sticker with every order of the book. So go check it out. Me and Lee over on federaljack.com. Okay. The other thing, if you want these bumper stickers, I know Chris has a thing set up over on Truth Frequency. There's a commercial for it where you hear Joe's voice, and he's like, go to Truth Frequency Radio / whatever, and I can't remember what it is right now. It's like / bumper sticker or something like that. Any of the listeners I'll find out what it is eventually during the broadcast, and I'll say it to you guys live. But if you do want a bumper sticker and some Federal Jack swag, send a self-addressed stamped envelope. Some of you are probably too young to remember this little gig, but some of the older crowd listening remember. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope, meaning you send me an envelope, you take an envelope and you fill it out, with the information I'm going to give you on it, and you mail it to me. And inside that envelope, you put another envelope with your address on the two-part. Now, I'll fill out the return address, but you put your address and a stamp on it, so I don't have to pay for postage. And I will give you some Federal Jack business cards, federaljack.com / down the rabbit hole with Popeye business cards, and a truthfrequencyradio.com bumper sticker. And I will mail them to you. And it won't cost you anything. You just have to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. Like when I was a kid, they used to do this. So send it to federaljack.com, P.O. Box 291-566, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33329. So that's federaljack.com, P.O. Box 291-566, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33329. Now, on to the information. And I had to get all that out there because, again, I've taken so many nights off the past couple of weeks. And I never, ever plug anything, and I constantly forget to do things. So, by the way, I will be caught up on the archives. We're only 2 or 3 shows away, 2 shows in the True Frequency archives away from being caught up completely for you all. And in the archives on Federal Jack, I'm a few more behind because if you've noticed, I've upped the production value, but I will be getting all of them up. And even, I know I won't get all of them up before, at least on Federal Jack. I'm going to get the Truth Frequency archives up to date before I have surgery, but I'll get the Federal Jack archives about 85 to 90% up to snuff. And then over the course of the next few days while I'm recovering, I'll get the other ones rendered for you guys. But the first couple of days I'm probably going to be pretty useless because I'm going to be getting beaten up a little bit. I'm going to be getting some stuff done to one of my feet, and one of my ankles. I can't walk properly, and hopefully this will help me walk a little more like a normal human being and have a lot less pain in my foot. But the surgery I'm having is extremely painful, and it's kind of debilitating for a few weeks. So whatever, it is what it is. Hopefully everything will work out. So, on with the broadcast. Oh, by the way, and this is not a guarantee, because I have a few things I want to get through tonight, but if I have enough time, I might even open up the phone lines tonight. Might. So don't go calling in quite yet. If I have enough time and I think I'm going to be able to, I will let you guys know ahead of time. So just kind of bear with me. I have to see how much time I have. Okay, so in the promo for the broadcast tonight, okay, I said a few things. I said I was going to discuss a few topics, right? CIA crack slinging, the DOD waste, and what the F is Krampus. Well, there's a few other things I'd like to discuss as well as those three things. I just didn't have enough space on Twitter to fit everything. So I used I went with the 140 character limit to try to advertise the broadcast, but you know there's always so much more. So I'll get into the CIA crack slinging, I promise. I'll get into the DOD waste. I will definitely, I promise I will get into Krampus. Okay, there's probably people going, Popeye, what in the hell is Krampus? Oh, trust me, Krampus is creepy. Okay, Krampus is very real, too, by the way. The American version of Santa Claus or Saint Nick is the mild version, we'll say. I've talked about this before. You've heard me refer to Santa Claus as Satan Claus before, but people always think I'm joking around. Well, we'll get into that, I promise. But first, there's something else I want to get into. And it's something I often am forced to touch on here in the broadcast, and that would be the police state. And I just want to point out another glaring red flag that we, you know, because this is a drum I will constantly beat, because there are people that will constantly say, oh, it's okay, you know, it's for my safety, it's for my safety. No. We live in a police state, and now everything is a crime, and it's to the point where, I mean, cops spend more time and energy going after people that aren't criminals than going after and stopping real crime, like murder or rape or, you know, assault, right? I mean, you really can't stop all crimes, but they're out making offenders of people that aren't even offenders. So what am I talking about in this case? Man is suing Manhattan Beach police for wrongly targeting him during a bathroom gay sex sting. And I guess this was out in California back in 2012. Now, this guy was targeted, because he was but he was taken care of. I guess they assumed he was in there looking for sex, but he was the caretaker of a special needs child who happened to be in the bathroom. I'll let the thing play out. I'm going to point something out too, but it just goes to show you how how many people did they waste? How much manpower was taken up the streets to scope out a bathroom for guys that are cruising for other guys in a public bathroom? Well, isn't there real crime to be stopped? Well, Popeye, that's horrific. Well, okay, maybe some people might not find it morally acceptable, and they might be, offended by it. But I don't believe it requires us to waste the efforts of at least 5 police officers. You'll hear at least 5 police officers, probably more, behind the scenes, dispatchers and whatnot. At least 5 police officers wasting that much energy and money and manpower and time on a sex sting in the bathroom. And then they beat the crap out of and target an innocent guy and besmirch his name. Listen to this.
Manhattan Beach police being sued tonight. A man claims police wrongfully arrested and publicly humiliated him in a sex sting operation. KCAL9's Serene Branson is live in Manhattan Beach where the sting went down. Serene?
Well, Rick, the 22-year-old South Bay man is federally suing the city of Manhattan Beach and their police department, saying that he was an innocent victim in this undercover sting that took place here along the Manhattan Beach Strand.
It was all a very terrifying situation.
Speaking to us from Philadelphia, where he's in school, Sam Couch says his picture was published by Manhattan Beach police after a bathroom sexting operation he says he had no part in. In March of last year, Couch says he was in the men's Marine Street restroom working as a caretaker for a 14-year-old boy with a disability who needed to use the bathroom. The boy noticed someone peering through a stall hole. Couch's attorney talking to us from San Francisco.
Suddenly, the child bursts from the stall and runs up to my client and says, "There's a man looking at me."
When they went to leave, Couch claims he was taken down.
I was knocked to the ground, had my hands put behind my back. I had Some men putting their knees on the back of my knees so that I couldn't move my legs. I had other men having me in chokeholds to subdue me.
No, I just got to pause it for a second because I want you to notice the one thing I wanted to point out to you. The kid ran out of the stall, right? That's what you heard him say. The kid ran out of the stall and said to the guy, "What? There's somebody peering at me through the stall, like through a hole." So he takes, what's this guy's first instinct? Is to take the kid that he's in charge of. Parents know, they know that this guy's taking care of and watching their kid. It's not like he kidnapped him. And his first instinct is to get that kid out of danger. So he goes to take him out of the bathroom, and they tackle him. He didn't do anything wrong. How about the pervert scumbag police officer that was peering through the stall watching the kid? Obviously, if you took 2 seconds to look in, you'd see it was a kid. You'd see it wouldn't take, half of a brain. Even a half-retarded monkey officer could figure out that the kid was probably special needs. Put 2 and 2 together. Oh, no. It'd only take about 3 or 4 seconds to do that, right? But what's worse is this guy was staring at him long enough that the kid noticed it. You think the guy was only staring? You think it was like a movie where the guy was only staring at him for a second and the kid noticed? No. That means that this pervert was staring at this kid going to the bathroom. But they arrest the other guy who's his legal caretaker. So who's the real pervert? The guys that are in the bathroom doing the sexting to begin with when they should be out in the streets catching real criminals?
Says he was accused of gay cruising, child endangerment, but ultimately let go without charges.
His parents did vouch for me that I was his caregiver and there was absolutely nothing wrong going on with the situation. And still the police continued to badger me about the situation and still wouldn't take any other answers.
Months later, he was shocked and humiliated, he says, to see his picture along with 19 others in the paper and on the police website.
I've been working with special needs kids for several years. I've built very close relationships with the parents, and so to have somebody make these types of allegations is just a huge blow to your character.
And an unlawful one, according to his attorney, who says a lewd conduct investigation can't be undercover.
The message is this: if you wish to conduct an undercover sting operation, make it comply with the law.
And Couch says the whole ordeal delayed his college application process because his name and his mugshot lived on the internet. The Manhattan Beach Police Department did not return our calls for comment. Reporting live tonight in Manhattan Beach, Serene Branson, KCAL 9 News.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why they didn't return your phone calls. I mean, why are they wasting money? Here's the first question I would ask. Aside from, why are you people so ignorant in your jobs? Why are you targeting bathrooms for gay sex stings? Well, Popeye, it's a moral issue. People are offended. You people are wasting money and resources on a non-issue. You know what? I'm sure people are offended. I know that the country is split 50-50 or maybe a little more, 60-40, whatever, on gay marriage. I don't care. I honestly don't care. I don't care if people are gay. I don't care, whatever. Okay? If there's a problem with, you have maybe a large problem with a large amount of men cruising that area, and maybe it's a family area or something, okay, I can understand the cops going in and just kind of rustling feathers and, scooting them out, kind of like they did back in the old days maybe, but having gay sex stings, a sting, where you have like at least 5 officers undercover in a bathroom. You don't think that you should maybe be using these undercover officers in a better location? I don't know, stopping crime somewhere? I don't really care about guys cruising for other guys. I could care less. Maybe you should be stopping rape. Maybe you guys should arrest the criminals in government. How about that? How about the criminals that walk around in Armani suits? Oh, they're your bosses. Oh, silly me. Bad Popeye. Duh. Now I remember. Okay, I understand how it works now. Armed thugs. Just, it's a waste of taxpayer money. As taxpayers, people should be pissed, but the problem is there's a lot of people that, with something like this, people might not want to come out publicly, even if they're for it. They might not want to publicly put their name for it because, these guys were cruising for, sex in a bathroom. So you see how it's easy to target things like that? Did they really stop any major crimes from happening? Were there really any victims? Were there? Did they stop anybody from being victimized? I don't know. They think they did. Was it necessary to tackle the guy and beat the crap out of him? I don't think so. Well, I guess they do. But that's standard operating procedure now. They just beat the crap out of you. There is no more, hey, get on the ground. Do you have to tackle the guy if he's not being violent or resistant in any way, shape, or form? Really? He was trying to take the kid, Popeye. Right, you guys are morons. You deserve to be sued. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, moving on, I have a ton of other things I want to get into besides just ripping into the police state. Tearing the ever-growing police state a new a-hole, right? I just wanted to point out another glaring waste of money and taxpayers' dollars. I mean, how many people were mugged, shot, stabbed, and or killed, raped, in the time that they were wasting money chasing gay guys in a bathroom? Really, talk about a waste of taxpayer money. I could go on, but I want to get into other things. So, first, since we're talking about a waste of taxpayer money, I will move on to the DOD wasting money, and then I'll get into the CIA slinging crack. That's right. The CIA slinging the crack rock. And then in an hour or two, we're going to get into what the hell is Krampus? We're going to get into a few other things as well. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, first, the DOD blew $486 million on aircraft that don't even work because they don't have the parts to make them work. Say what, Popeye? That's right. They don't have the parts to make them work. Period. What do I mean by they don't have the parts to make them period? Well, when you to work. Well, when you have equipment like an M1 Abrams tank or a C-130 Hercules or other such type equipment, you have to have a warehouse full of spare parts just so that piece of equipment can get off the ground, fly around, do a mission, come back and land. And every time that thing lands, it's not like your car, where you're like, whoa, I'm just going to go to the store. You hop in your car, drive to the store, drive back, park your car. You get in and out of your car probably 300 or 400 times before you go out in between your oil changes, right? You do 3,000-4,000 miles in between your oil changes. Well, planes don't operate like that. They don't. Tanks and stuff don't operate like that. They go out, they run around, they have to get maintained. They have to get looked after. It was one of the problems they had with the initial invasion of Iraq, that the invasion force outran the supply line. One of the reasons they had such problems. Anyway, I know, they'll tell you that everything went hunky-dory. Anyway, these things cost money. A lot of money to maintain. It costs a lot of money to make these things run. So, how did the DOD blow $486 million? And mind you, this is only one little, tiny, infinitesimal little example of how they waste our money and how this war of terror for the past 12 years has been ridiculous. People, come on. I have this argument with people all the time. The economy is not bad because of war spending, Popeye. It's bad because old people and people on disability are just, they're a burden on the system. Really? You mean none of these politicians and this isn't a burden on the system? Here, let's see what they spent $486 million on. Shall we?
The fact that the U.S. government wastes huge amounts of money in ridiculous ways, like it has money to burn, is no big shocker. But here's a pretty disgusting instance of it. In 2008, the Defense Department spent $486 million to buy 20 Italian-made twin-propeller military transport aircraft called G-222s to give to the Afghan Air Force. And 5 years later, they're basically rusting heaps of scrap metal. The U.S. bought the aircraft to help the Afghans support their own military when we leave them to the mess over there. But according to a letter by John Sopko, Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, no one bothered to buy spare parts for the aircraft to help meet operational requirements. He said another $200 million was needed in order to make sure these things could actually fly. But no one bothered to think that through. And it turns out the Italian-made planes aren't even cut out for the hot and dusty environment in Afghanistan. And so the Department of Defense ended the G-222 program. So the aircraft only ended up flying for a total of 234 hours. That translates to more than $2 million an hour. They were supposed to fly for 4,500 hours. That's why the government spent so much money on them, because they were supposed to be used a lot. But in actuality, they're sitting on a tarmac at an airport in Afghanistan and at an Air Force base in Germany. That is a colossal waste of taxpayer money, almost $500 million. And now the Inspector General plans on running an investigation into the total amount of money spent to procure, operate, sustain, and dispose of the G-222s, and to evaluate what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. And that paper-pushing, posture-filled investigation is going to cost taxpayers even more money. So here we have all of our politicians all spiffed up in their suits and flag pins and getting in front of any camera they can to talk about misspending money on food stamps and healthcare and other stuff that people actually need, when all the while they're blowing billions in the defense sector on crap we don't even use, like we have money to burn. If anything should be burned, it's them at the stake for wasting our hard-earned money. Tonight, let's talk about that.
Now, do you need any more examples? I mean, I could sit here and list off example after example after example. I mean, the whole war is just a waste of friggin' money. How much money do we spend? How much money do we spend on war versus healthcare? Real healthcare, not Obamacare. Let's get rid of Obamacare for a second. Let's just take that out of the equation. Can you imagine if we actually did care about this country? Because I don't have a problem with giving the residents of this country free healthcare. Oh my God, Popeye, you want people to have free healthcare? Oh yeah, I know, I'm a dick. I want other human beings to be okay. Yeah, I'm a real jerk-off for that. Anyway, I don't have an issue with giving people in this country free healthcare. I don't have an issue with tax money going to that. I'd rather it go to that than the military-industrial complex. See, that's the problem. The amount of money that's spent on war spending each day. I think it's something like $6 billion a month is spent in Afghanistan. Something like that, like $6 billion or something like that a month is spent in Afghanistan. I mean, how do you spend $6 billion? I couldn't spend $6 billion in my lifetime. Oh, you could, Popeye. No, I couldn't because I'm frugal. I was raised to not be wasteful. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's just absolutely insane. It's like something like $6 billion. $6 billion. Can you imagine that? Even if my number's wrong, maybe if it's a little less, but even if it's more, and I'm being quite conservative about the number. Can you imagine what could you do with $6 billion? What What could you do in your let's sit down. I'm going to personalize this for a second. This is an issue I have to drive home. What could you do with $6 billion? What could you do in your life with $1 million? Think about that. What kind of good could you affect in your life and maybe your loved ones' lives? Your mother, your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your father, your brother, your sister, uncles, aunts, cousins, grandma, grandpa. What kind of good could you do for $1 million? You know what Chris Geo could do with $1 million? Look what he built. I'll give you an example. I'll use truth frequency because it's just a perfect example, perfect physical example. He built this network with like nothing, barely anything compared to, the mainstream media, all this. He built this network. And look what's provided to you all with the radio stream and everything else, and the chat room and the website, all the hosts, everybody volunteering their time for nothing, pennies compared to the mainstream media. Literally, donations from the good people out there that listen, like you all that are tuned in right now, are what made this network possible and what make it still possible. Can you imagine what Chris could do with $1 million? Now, look at what they're spending per month. What do you think you could do with $1 million in your life? Tell me, what do you think you could do? You think you could maybe buy your mom and dad that home you think they deserve because they've been busting their asses their whole lives? Or maybe you lost one of your parents. Maybe mom is gone. Maybe dad's gone. And it's only one of them left. And you think mom or dad should have a house. Don't you think it'd be nice to buy your parents a house? I know I wish I had $1 million because first thing I would do, I wouldn't take care of any of my stuff. The first thing I'd do is I'd go buy my dad a huge mansion. Whatever he wanted, wherever he wanted. Not a huge, opulent, waste of money. I shouldn't say mansion, but I'd buy him a nice big house. Something he could call his own. And a golf cart to drive around in it if he needed to. If I had the money. How many people wouldn't want to do that for their parents? How many people could buy all kidding aside about the golf cart driving around, how many people could buy a decent house for their loved ones? With $6 billion. What could you do with $1 million? What could you do with $6 billion? And they just spend it, kick the can down the road. Oh, we'll have savings in 15 years when the Congress in 15 years is going to be not held accountable to your deals. They're going to be like, I'm not liable to your deals. You're going to get the hell out of here. And they'll throw that out. So there's no savings. Chucky Schumer thinks that veterans should take a 1% cut in the benefits pay. Oh, yeah. He doesn't think Congress should. He thinks Congress already took enough cuts. But he thinks veterans, oh, well, you should take a cut. Oh, really? We should take a cut, Chucky, huh? You guys make $190-something thousand a year as congressmen, senators? Maybe $170,000 a year, and most of them are already millionaires when they get in there. And you want a veteran who makes maybe $30,000 a year at the most? At the most? It's like a 100% disabled guy. Most of these vets make $9,000 or $10,000 a year, and you want these guys to take a 1% cut in pay? It's only 1%, Popeye. Kiss my ass, Schumer. I'm not even going to refer you as senator. D-bag. Ugh. 1%. How much money do they waste? Why am I harping on this, people? Because everybody out there, if there's one thing, everybody, I don't like politics, I don't like this, I don't like that. Economics. It's the one thing that nobody can argue doesn't affect them. I've had this conversation with people where they tell me, economics doesn't affect me. Whatever the government does with money doesn't affect me. And I just look at them, you're brain dead if you think that. Anybody with even a half a heartbeat and half of a pulse understands that economics affects you. This is absolutely ridiculous. If you don't care about soldiers dying and veterans and everything else, okay, put all that aside. We'll put all that aside. Let's look at the brass tacks of it all. Money. How much money is being wasted and spended on this war? How much? How much money are we wasting? I mean, besides the future of this country with the younger generations and everything else, how much money are we wasting? We're putting ourselves into debt, chasing a phantom that doesn't exist, and not an endless enemy, because there could be terrorists anywhere. Oh my God, they're in your sock drawer. Oh my God, under your couch. Oh my God, in that cardboard box. Run! Ah! Terror! Never-ending terror! Ah! Never-ending faucet of money into the military-industrial complex's mouth. That's what this is. And driving out to Dallas, I saw so many broken down, decrepit-looking roads. I saw potholes in roads the size of, Volkswagen Beetles. I saw bridges that I thought were going to fall down. Literally, I saw stuff that was old as dirt. There's a lot of bridges in this country, a lot of roads that are in need of repair. How many of you lived near big cities and you grew up, or within the vicinity of a big city, and you grew up where most of the highways have lights on them, and they're 4 or 5 lane big highways? A lot of this country is not like that. A lot of this country, the interstates, you get out there in the middle of the country and for hundreds and hundreds of miles, these interstates are 2 lanes wide with no guardrails on them. 60, 70, 80-foot drop-off. Now, I already knew this, but I hadn't been on a road like this in a decent amount of time. Probably about 14 years. 14, 15 years it's been since I really went on a hardcore, long, out west, from the East Coast side of this country road trip. And when you're in the military, it's different. When you're civilian and you're by yourself, you start to notice different things. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, about 14, 15 years since I got a chance to drive through all these interstates. And a lot of these interstates I was on 14, 15 years ago. And I couldn't believe that some of them looked like they did 14 or 15 years ago. I had assumed, obviously incorrectly, I always tell you all you shouldn't assume because it makes an ass out of you and me, right? But I had assumed that because I see the roads getting wider down here where I live, and I see roads getting wider in other places, that they must have naturally, because of all the road traffic, they had to have put, a 3rd or 4th lane in. They haven't. A lot of these interstates are the same as they were when they were laid and built back in the 50s and the 60s. Some of them in the 70s. Some of these interstates were just recently built within the past 15 or 20 years. There's highways out there, whether it's a parkway or an interstate or whatever the hell. And most of the interstate system, the Eisenhower interstate system, was built back in the 50s and the 60s. But there's other parkways and expressways and also other crap that's been built over the years. But some of the stuff that's been built since the 70s and stuff hasn't been properly maintained. Where's all that money going? How come when you take one of these highways across, like, out through up through Louisiana or up through let's see, you're on I-10, Interstate 10. How come it's 2 lanes for most of the highway on either side? Why is it like it was back in the 50s and the 60s? Why is it still just as wide as when they first built it? Why? Doesn't make any sense. Why? Why? Where's all the money going? I want you to think about that. Where is all the money going? You constantly hear them say we have to give money to all these foreign countries like Egypt and Israel and all these other countries. Buy them stuff, give them. And by the way, just when it's not that we always cut them a check. A lot of times we give them equipment. We buy them military equipment. At an inflated price, I'm sure. But all that money, how about all the money we've wasted in bombs and missiles and equipment and ships and planes and training the troops and equipment for the troops, boots, combat gear, all of it. All that money that we didn't need to spend on that stuff. See, I want the veteran stuff. No, they earned it. You signed a contract. Now, if you don't needlessly put them in harm's way to begin with, then you won't have a massive influx of veterans. So you don't attack the symptom, you attack the problem, which would be you putting people in harm's way. For profit. How much money did we spend on bombs, rockets, tanks, bullets, planes, ships, and everything else, blowing things up in everybody else's country, setting humanity back? Not taking a step forward in our evolution at all. Nope. Setting everybody back, putting Iraq back in time, pretty much bombing it back to the Stone Age. Keeping Afghanistan in the Stone Age. Afghanistan was starting to, there are still certain parts of Kabul, I guess, that are somewhat more modern, but nothing. It doesn't. If you look at pictures of what it used to be and what it is now, you can see it's been bombed backwards too. So, kept in the Stone Age. How much money? Let's set aside the. I know people. What about the human lives? I've covered that a bazillion times. I'm going at the angle of economics right now because that's the one thing that seems to affect everybody. I mean, all this affects us on different levels, but this is the one thing that people seem to pay attention to is their wallet. So, how much money could we be spending on maybe, making 4-lane highways, safer highways? Because the amount of traffic and the amount of people we have on the roads now is more than these roads were built for. So how about if we had if we spent maybe a quarter of the money that we spend on bombing people in the military-industrial complex on fixing our own infrastructure, bridges, everything, roads. And that includes water pump, water facilities, electrical facilities, actually not allowing the EPA to do their thing or whatever, but that's just a whole separate side issue, right? How much money is wasted on killing and death when it should be used here at home? How much? How much? Go do the math. I'm not going to sit here and do the math for you. It's billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. If you want a number, sit down, take an hour out of your super busy day, because I know Dancing with the Stars relaxes you, but you know what? Stop. You're wasting time. Sit down with a friggin' pad and draw a line down the middle. Do some quick math, do a little whatever search engineering, and you look up, figure out however much money total. Go with what they admit to spending, because obviously they've probably spent way more. Obviously, they have spent way more. Not probably, they have spent way more that you don't know about. But we'll say, go with the official number supposedly spent to date. I'm sure you can find it in like a 5-minute search on just the war in Afghanistan, or better yet, war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq. Add them up. Not to mention bombing Yemen and all that stuff. Just war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq. Might be labeled under war on terror, but try to make sure it's Afghanistan and Iraq added up together. Okay? Get a total number. Then I want you to realistically think about how many homeowners there are in this country. How many people who are underwater in their mortgages right now? Go look up the numbers of how many people are losing their homes. I'm sure there's probably some total somewhere, some round number of how many people are completely underwater with their mortgages or in trouble with their mortgages in this country as a whole. They'll probably give some round number out. Compare the two, money-wise. Like how much money out there in underwater mortgages and stuff. I'm willing to bet that 10% of the money that we've spent on these two wars, just 10%, could have paid off everybody's mortgage in this country. Everybody. I'm willing to bet. Just 10%. Probably even less. What about healthcare? Real healthcare. I'm willing to bet that 10% of the money spent in this total war of bullshit, because that's what it is, I'm willing to bet that just 10% of that, 10, 10, I'm willing to bet just 10% would cover health care for everybody. Proper health care for everybody in this country. I'm willing to bet for less than 25% you could upgrade the bridges, the roads, everything that need to be, all the tunnels, anything. All from East Coast to West Coast, from north to south in this country. But we don't spend it on that. No, we spend it on bombs that can kill you, accurate, I use the air quotes, accurate within, a couple feet via laser, supposedly. They're working on bullets that can chase you around corners. Because, hey, that's important. What about a cure for cancer? What about a cure for homelessness? You could pay off all the mortgages and buy all the homeless homes for probably like 25, 30%, maybe not even 30. I'll say 25% of the money they've spent in the war of terror. Think about it. Maybe that'll hit you. If you don't care about the politics, the dead people, and anything else. Maybe the economics of it will hit you. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is December 17th, 2013. What do we got, 8 days before Christmas? The Christmas holiday. Oh, I'm going to be wrecking Christmas for some of you tonight. Oh, I'm sure I'll get hate mail over this one. Yes. Before hour 2 is over, I will have gotten into Krampus and just what the hell Krampus is. All I'll say is, you better not... how does that go? You better not cry. No, you better not shout. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. The Satan Claus is coming to town. No, it's Santa Claus, Popeye. Look, if you have kids that might be in earshot that still believe in jolly old Saint Nick, then you should perhaps get them out of earshot. You might not want them to hear this information about Krampus. You might not want them to hear the information about Christmas and the pagan roots. I know, I'm wrecking things. Papa, you're putting a damper on the holiday season. No, I'm just trying to help you understand a little bit about the truth. The American version of Christmas and Santa Claus is like the happy, friendly, family version of St. Nicholas. But, jolly old St. Nick wasn't always jolly. And let me ask you this question, and then I guess I was going to get into the CIA thing, but I guess we can get into Krampus. I was going to save Krampus for last, but I guess since I'm talking about Christmas, I might as well. We can get into Krampus now. Does anybody else find it creepy that it's okay, and I guess I never thought about this when I was younger until I got older, but doesn't anybody think it's weird that we think it's cool that we tell our kids that a fat guy in an elf suit breaks into the house at 3 o'clock in the morning to quote-unquote stuff gifts under a Christmas tree, and we think that's okay? Any other night of the year, if a fat guy in an elf suit broke into your house, you'd probably haul off and shoot him with a double-barreled shotgun. Let's be honest, on Christmas night, if you caught him in your house, you'd probably level a double-barrel shotgun at him and take him out. And let's not lie about it. So I'm just being sarcastic. I'm sorry. I'm just breaking some balls. Anyway, for those of you that are going to get mad at me for ruining Christmas, I'm not doing this to wreck your holiday. I'm not atheist and hate God or Jesus Christ or blah, 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 or Santa or anything else. I'm just trying to tell you some true information. Now, Krampus is very real. Krampus is what you would call the Christmas devil. In fact, that's what he's been referred to as, is Krampus, the Christmas devil. He's what happens to the naughty children. I have a little audio clip. It's from a podcast. I want to give the guy, I want to give him credit. It's called the Ancient Art Podcast, and this guy does a lot of research about all different, not only art but what do you call it? Not ceremonies, but I guess you could say like societal rituals and things like that. He gets in depth with his podcast, so you can check him out. It's called Ancient Art Podcast. It's on YouTube. But I want you to listen to what he has to say, because he really gets into detail. Listen. Here's a little info tidbit, and then I'm going to drop some info on you. But here's a little info tidbit for you about what exactly is Krampus. And by the way, you're going to notice, which I'll point this out, but you're going to notice the mainstream media is focusing a lot on Krampus as of late, and it has a lot. Again, it's pagan. Anyway, here we go. Krampus, the Christmas devil.
Gather round, young flock, and prepare yourself for an alternative tale of that old mystical elf who goes from house to house on cold winter nights, visiting sleeping children who've been naughty or nice. 'Twas the eve of St. Nicholas, when all round about a silence so deathly was lurking throughout. High about the peaks in the Austrian snow came a fiend with St. Nicholas, whom naughty children well know. Coarse pelts of goat hair as its grim sickly mantles, and a sharp wicked crown over ram's horns much like antlers. Red tongue stretching long as a slithering snake that can strike and tear flesh, children's blood does it slake. It's the night of the 5th of December, kids fear, when the judgment of children looms frightfully near. For the beast of the holiday weighs your virtue and vice, and doles out its tortures based on naughty or nice. 'Tis not falsehood this tale of the great Christmas devil. Since the dawn of the ages in the wild man we revel. Be warned that indeed his name you should know, for it's Krampus today who may well steal the show. A wicked demon of lore calls home to the dark winter nights and snow-capped alpine peaks. Clad in the coarse woolen hide of sheep and crowned with horribly twisted, piercing horns, the Christmas devil Krampus descends upon the unsuspecting at that singular time of year on the eve of the feast of jolly old St. Nick. Krampus, or for the Americans, Krampus, can be traced back centuries and is regarded mostly as an Austrian legend.
Good day, mate.
Yeah, no, Austria. In Austria, Germany, and other Alpine countries, the feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th is celebrated not quite with the same fervor as Christmas, but as something of a teaser or Christmas dry run. On the night of December 5th, before going to sleep, children leave their shoes outside their bedroom doors. If you've been a good little boy or girl, St. Nick will come by in the night and fill your shoes with fruit, nuts, chocolate, and candy. Of course, today most snotty-faced brats will say yuck to the fruit and nuts, but this was a different time when fruit and nuts were actually kind of special in winter. The treats in the shoes is not unlike the American tradition of hanging stockings. In both cases, we have footwear serving as a vehicle for an early Christmas treat, and at least in my household it was. The stockings were always fair game at 5 a.m. Christmas morning before the elders would get up. Of course, if you've been naughty, see aforementioned snotty-faced brats, then we might expect a lump of coal in the stocking. Well, a hard lump of coal would be too good for the rustic Germanic youth. No lashes doled out by the devilish Krampus are what you deserve. Grasping a switch of birch sticks to beat disobedient kids and a sack or a basket on his back to drag off the especially naughty ones, Krampus is a Yuletide reality as much as Santa Claus himself. Krampus and Saint Nick are not adversaries. In fact, they're very much a tag team. In Santa's sleigh, Krampus rides shotgun, or sometimes the other way around. Krampus is one of Saint Nick's many companions among various European traditions. Like Krampus, some of his companions form a stark contrast to the pristine, jolly, child-friendly gift-giver. In the German Rhineland, we find the fur-clad Belsnickel, who's also popular among America's Pennsylvania Dutch. In much of the rest of Germany, the gentler, bearded, brown-robed Santa-like Knecht Ruprecht can be seen helping out St. Nicholas. His dirty robes and ashen face are smeared with the soot of chimneys from his special deliveries. And most popular even today throughout Belgium and the Netherlands is Zwarte Piet, or Schwarzpeter. This finely dressed lad with a similarly sooty face also doles out St. Nick's treats. According to some historians, in fact, the companion giver of both gifts and punishments may be the more likely model for today's Western consumerist Santa Claus, rather than some pious 4th century Turkish bishop.
And I'm going to pause it there for a second. I've seen Zwarte Piet firsthand in the Netherlands. The first time I was in Amsterdam with my wife, we were there for the celebration, and kids dress up in little white kids. They put blackface on and they run around in the street dressed as Zwarte Piet, Black Pete. And to me, it's got this, but also because he's Santa's helper or servant or whatever. Like I've talked about this on air. I've seen commercials where they have this one commercial, and it's ingrained in my memory. Remember the old slave galleons they used to have, where the old all the old ships when they were slave driven, right? So they would have like whatever up on top deck, but down below deck they would have, inside the hull of the ship, it would be at least the section where these guys sat, the rowers, was hollowed out where they could sit. And there was a wooden plank up the center where whoever, the slave driver, master, whatever, whipman, whatever you want to call them, would walk up and down, back and forth. And, they'd have 100 or 200 guys rowing, and that's what they'd be doing. They were slaves just rowing the ship, right? And they would just obviously row. It kind of makes you wonder, row your boat? Anyway. So, I'm looking at this commercial, and I see this, it's the inside of a slave ship, or the inside of a ship, right? One of these ships, not so much carrying just slaves, but say carrying goods, merchant ship, whatever, cargo ship. But it's human powered, and there's like 50 or 60 of these little Zwarte Piets inside of the ship, rowing. And Santa is walking. By the way, Saint Nick over there, good old Saint Nick, the same one that runs around with Krampus. He's dressed like the Pope, with the mitre hat, the gown. He's got a staff, everything, except he's all red. I kid you not. And he's walking up and down this plank with this mitre hat on, this robe, and this staff, and 60 black guys rowing a boat. Now, I don't know about you, but the first visual I got, I looked over at my wife and I said, I can't believe this is on television. Now, to them, and I asked, there's a lot of people, a lot of the people in the Netherlands, at least a lot of the people that I saw that were there, that were black, were from Suriname. And even the other European people that say they were from Germany or whatever, if they had come over, that were black, I asked them if they got offended by this. You get in conversations while you're sitting in a coffee shop or a pub or whatever, and I would ask them, does that bother you? Because in America, I know people would be in the streets flipping over cars, burning buildings to the ground for things like that. People be getting shot. You couldn't walk down the street like that in certain areas. You'd be murdered for things like that. And I think one of the most interesting things and I'll get back to the thing about Krampus in a second, but one of the most interesting responses I got to that was, I had a guy tell me, well, and here in Europe, we're not exposed to the same racial stereotypes that your media puts out, and that you Americans have. We don't. They basically said that they don't get offended. They're not. I mean, and this was. And everybody could be different, but this guy told me that at least him and the people that he knew that lived in the Netherlands there, the other black people, I guess, that he knew, did not get offended by this because it was an old tradition. And here, I guess in America, we would get all up in arms and offended over it. Basically, he told me that Americans need to lighten up. Now, I'm not passing a judgment whether or not he was correct on us or not. I'm just throwing that out there, that was an interesting, because to me, that was an interesting comment from someone that lived there that was a black guy. Because to me, at first I saw it, and I looked at my wife, and I was like, is there about to be like shots fired in the street? Like, you have to remember, I live in South Florida. At the time, I lived in Miami. You couldn't do that in Miami. You would literally have shots being fired in the street if you paraded around in blackface in the middle of the street in Miami. That wouldn't go over too well. Okay? Pretty much anywhere in South Florida, that wouldn't go over too well. So, in large parts of the country, that wouldn't go over too well. And even in a predominantly white section of the country, that would still be like looked at like, wow, that's kind of, you're kind of crossing a line. And over there in Europe, it's something they do every year. They have vendors that come out with carriages and stuff, and they got little animated Pete's that hop around, and kids will go up to the thing, and sometimes they'll spit out little candy or whatever if they put in a coin, like a euro coin or whatever. There's all different little things that it's very different. I guess it's all about culture. Anyway, I want to get back to playing this thing about Krampus before we run out of time. I just thought, since he brought up Schwarze Pete for a second, I'd share that little tidbit before I forgot. It's very interesting when you travel outside. Again, when you travel outside of this bubble that we live in, because our view on reality is not complete, because you don't see us from an outsider's perspective, right? It's always different when you get a chance. It's like if you videotape yourself, if like you're an alcoholic, or if you're prone to like rage fits or something like that, and you set up a camera and you videotape yourself, and then you go back and you watch it later, wow, I actually do that. So it's the same thing. If you step outside, if you go to an outside country and you look at your country where you come from, your home, from an outsider's view, and outside of that bubble, it's always a much different perspective. So I just thought I would share that with you all really quick. Anyway, back to Krampus.
And not all of St. Nick's companions are human, of a sort. The saint is popularly said to ride upon a brilliant white steed, usually a horse, but sometimes a goat. The Yule buck, or Yule goat, is a popular Yuletide feature in Scandinavia. Made out of straw today, the Yule goat is customarily set ablaze as a reenactment of goat sacrifice during the pagan festival of Yule. And that pagan goat sacrifice is thought to be the celebration of an ancient Nordic legend. As chronicled in the 13th century prose Edda, the god Thor drove his chariot drawn by 2 goats across the sky. Thor slaughtered the goats to feed his fellow gods, and summarily resurrected the animals through the magic of his hammer. In the 1890 pioneering comparative study of mythology and religion, The Golden Bough, Sir James Fraser documents a Swedish performance of a man clad in goat hides as the Yule goat. The actor, hidden by a coverlet made of skins and wearing a pair of formidable horns, is led into a room by 2 men who make believe to slaughter him while they sing verses. At the conclusion of the song, the Yule goat, after feigning death, jumps up and skips about to the amusement of the spectators. Could Austria's fur-clad Krampus and the Scandinavian Yuletide goatman have a common pagan ancestor? Krampus and the Christmas Devil get some attention in the 1835 German mythology by Jakob Grimm. one half of the famed titans of folk and fairy tales, the Brothers Grimm. While Krampus gets only a passing nod, our takeaway from Grimm's analysis can be that the various threatening and sooty sidekicks of St. Nicholas stem from Europe's pre-Christian pagan festivals. And while they may have been incorporated into Christian Christmas-time gift-giving narratives, these figures inevitably regress to exhibit some of their vestigial heathen characteristics. Despite the Church's best efforts to stamp out or convert these old-world pagan elements, Krampus is alive and well during the Feast of St. Nicholas. Krampus enjoyed an especially popular revival in the early 20th century as a fixture on greeting cards. Customarily expressing Grüß from Krampus, greetings from Krampus, these cards served as something of a cautionary tale against the perils of misbehavior. We generally see Krampus exacting his punishment on naughty children, stealing them away in baskets or shackles, threatening them with a switch, and pulling on their ears. Inscriptions tell the recipients to be brav, obedient, or they reprimand the unlucky, weil's du schlimm warst, because you've been naughty. And still today, on the night of December 5th, amidst glowing candles and glorious aromas wafting through traditional Christmas markets in charming Austrian Old Town centers, rambunctious young men don costumes of fur, chains, bells, and horns to become Krampus for one exciting night of the Krampuslauf. You might call it a Krampus parade or the running of the Krampus. The Krampuslauf's not only extremely popular in present-day Austria, but it's even making headway in American cities like Philadelphia with KrampuslaufPhiladelphia.com. The American Krampuslauf justifiably takes on a family-friendly nature. In the Austrian Krampuslauf, however, unfettered by American litigiousness, people would be well advised to keep their distance, as Krampus won't hesitate to invade your personal space, and that can mean some serious wallops from a stinging whip. With his bad boy attitude and devilish good looks, Krampus also enjoys the reputation of being something of a ladies' man.
Well, I gotta pause it again for a second. Not for nothing, but if some moron dressed up like the devil or a demon came up to me with a switch and tried hitting me, or did hit me, the next thing he would be doing would be looking up as he woke up, because I would knock his ass out. I'm no fun in haunted houses. When they get up in your grill and they get up and, it's okay for about 5 or 6 seconds. Like I had a girlfriend who, this one dude came up and he had a chainsaw with no chain on it. And he was up in her face for like 15 seconds and she was literally crying. And I was like, all right, man, you scared her. And he like overdid it. And I grabbed him and I pushed him back. And I told him, now you're crossing the line. I asked you to back off and you kept coming up on her, and she was already cowering up on me, crying her eyes out. And it wasn't like overreacting. It was really, he'd been doing it for like 15, 20 seconds. At first I laughed. I let her get scared. Ha, 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 she's scared. Afterwards. So, if some schmuck in a Krampus outfit came running up to me with a switch, he'd be pulling the switch out of his ear amongst spitting chiclets, which would be his teeth. I mean, can you imagine, people dressed up in demon costumes. I mean, I understand that people have no idea what they're celebrating, but they're dressed up in demon costumes, running around with switches, whacking men. Grown men dressed as Krampus, a demon, devil, whatever, goat man. Notice the goat, Baphomet, sacrifice, rituals all throughout the whole explanation. Don't worry. We'll be getting into this stuff more in broadcasts throughout the next couple days and next week, even while I'm recovering. And Christopher Everard and I are going to be getting into the occult stuff deep. He's going to bring that audio piece on, by the way. I've talked about where it's a bunch of Satanists. You've heard me refer to it plenty of times, and I said I was going to dig it out, but Chris is coming on, and he's going to dig out the audio piece where they're invoking. It's a bunch of Satanists, and they're trying to invoke Tiamat, and in doing so, they're also praying to and trying to invoke Enki, one of the Anunnaki. As I've told you, the Satanists, the people at the very top, tippy top, they worship Satan, whatever deities, and the Anunnaki, these whatever you want to call them, aliens, interdimensional beings from somewhere else, right? And people say there's no way that I said Satanism and aliens and stuff, whatever you want to call them. There's a connection, and people are like, you're crazy. Okay, well, tune in December 27th, 10 p.m. to midnight, when me and Christopher Everard are on, and I'll show you the connection. He's going to play you the audio. Anyway, back to Krampus.
While a night at the Krampuslauf can leave the men with some bruises, the furry beast is more inclined to woo the ladies with a few strategic, teasing taps of his switch. And I'm sure all the ladies daydream of a dark, muscular rogue stealing into their bedchambers to abduct and punish them for being very naughty girls. And imaginations can run wild with that impossibly long tongue.
Right, so Krampus hits the guys and then goes and tries to bang the girls. Right? Right? Where have I seen that before? Oh, well, our politicians and all the people that worship the devil and stuff, well, they act like that. Any connection? Baphomet worship, Satanism. Any connection?
So with December 5th just around the bend, or at most a year away, consider well whether your deeds to amend, for it's not on Christmas Day, when a nighttime visit from a dark mystical elf judges you naughty or nice. No, punishment stems from fierce Krampus himself. Let's hope you're not on thin ice.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not shout, I'm telling you why. 'Cause Krampus is coming down your chimney. It's bad enough that you have a fat, sweaty old elf that breaks into your house and rummages around your kitchen, living room area. Then you find out that he's based off of a character named St. Nicholas. And you go, oh, St. Nicholas. Oh, it sounds St. Nicholas. It sounds so noble and nice guy. Whoa, this guy's got a demon for a pet that rolls around with him and spanks little kids and with a switch. And you notice he says he carries a bag with him to carry off the children, the worst children. What do you think Krampus does with the bad children? Do you think he takes them to Krampus's house and smacks them around a little bit more and then lets them go? We didn't ever really get into the darker explanation. The kid does a good job of explaining and doing a basic overview. As I said, I will be getting into the more darker occult aspects of this stuff. But as you can see, the Christmas tradition, as you know, is a pagan tradition. And I know people get mad at me when I say this, but Jesus was not born on December 25th. From my research, he was born somewhere around the spring. And he was not born on December 25th. You could say I'm going to burn for saying that, and Jesus is going to be mad at me. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. But Christmas is not what you think it is. And again, you can see the church, when the Roman Catholic Church was taking things over, they have to incorporate. They have to take other religions, other things, and they have to kind of mix their ceremonies with other ceremonies. It's the way it works. Alexander the Great did it. I know. It's very in depth, and I just don't have enough time to get into it. But we'll get into it further in other broadcasts. Anyway, break coming up. Stay tuned. CIA crack slinging when we get back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment, tonight's live edition. Again, Thursday and Friday, I will be off. I will be recovering from surgery. But do not fear, the radio show will not stop. I will continue. The reason I'm actually keeping you guys informed about this time is because the last couple of times I've had surgery, I've never told anybody. I kept it quiet. And until that very night when I came on air and had surgery. And the last time I had surgery, I actually came on air that night. And I was all out of it. And I didn't explain until about halfway through that night that I was... banged up because I had surgery. So, and a lot of people, and then I took a couple days off, and people thought I was quitting my show and all. So it's just so drama. So, I don't have. Yes, I have people that can stand in, but you don't have a production team like some of these other people do. I'm my own producer and everything. So, long story short, I'm keeping you all informed this time, so you all know. what the dealio is, and you all know what's going on. So as I said, Thursday and Friday I'll have I'll let you all know if you follow me, if you have Twitter or Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I have 2 Twitters and 2 Facebooks. Okay, I have one for Federal Jack, and then I have one for the radio show. So the one for the radio show is, for Twitter, it's at Federal Jack, real simple. And then for Twitter, it's at DTRH _ Popeye. So at, the little at symbol, DTRH _ Popeye. That's the Twitter one. And then the other one's at Federal Jack. Those are the 2 Twitter handles. If you're on Facebook, Federal Jack has a fan page, Fed Jack, FED space JACK, real simple, Fed Jack. Go to the fan page, got almost 10,000 likes. Although Facebook blocks everything, so that really doesn't matter. And you could also, if you look me up, you can find me under Popeye Federal Jack, because Facebook wouldn't let me make an account without using your last name. So, and it wouldn't let me put Popeye from Federal Jack or Popeye of Federal Jack. So just look up, if you're on Facebook, Popeye Federal Jack, and you'll see me there. And if I don't think you're a Fed or a troll or a spammer or whatever, then I will accept your friend request. If I think you are, you will not get accepted. Just the way it is. All depends on your account, and I'm pretty good at picking them out. Maybe that'll be a challenge for the undercovers to come get me. Oh no, you're not going to find anything out. The only thing I use Facebook for really is to promote the shows. That's why I'm telling you to go there, because you will find out for the next day or so. I will in the next day or so, I will know whether or not I'm going to air my interview with Charlotte this week, and if I do, I'll air it on Friday. And so pay attention to the Twitter and the Facebook, because that's where I'll let everybody know, hey, this Friday I'm going to air blah, 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 if I have a chance to get the editing and everything finished, because I have a lot to get ready for before I have surgery. So it is what it is. Anyway, just stay tuned for that, because everybody is always asking how they can get in touch with me, how they can follow me, how they can listen, this and that. There's a lot of ways that you can tune in. The easiest way to listen to me is there's 2 easy ways, actually. It's not the easiest. There's 2 easy ways. You can either go to federaljack.com, which is my website. There's a listen live page, and it's got links to Truth Frequency, and it's got a player, a flash player with Chris's stream in it, and it's got Chris's chat room in there. It's the same portal to the chat that's on Truth Frequency. Or go to truthfrequencyradio.com. That's truthfrequencyradio.com. And go to the chat room up at the top in the header there. Click on the chat room header, chat room tab, and it'll bring you to the chat. And there's a flash player there. And if you just want to listen and you don't want to chat, you don't care about the links being thrown in the chat or whatever, or any of the chat convo going on, you just want to steer clear of that, I understand. There's a flash player right on the front of Truth Frequency that you can press, and it'll open up a little pop-up player. Plus, if you have to go mobile and you have a car that has TuneIn, you can look us up on TuneIn, Truth Frequency Radio. Add us to TuneIn. Chris also, I think, if I remember correctly, has a Truth Frequency smartphone app on the front of truthfrequencyradio.com. But if you have TuneIn, you can get TuneIn as well. There's multiple ways to listen to this broadcast and all the other great stuff over here on Truth Frequency. And then don't forget, over on federaljack.com, for the newer people there, I do have a download section there with a ton of different archive sections, one on JFK, one on 9/11, war, a bunch of other stuff. There's also a downloadable archive section of all of my shows, going back to the very first one I've done, and even guest spots I've done. And yes, the episode that I did on Christopher Everard's show on Sunday, I will be rendering, and I will be throwing that up as well. In fact, I hope to get at least some of the work done on that tonight before I go to bed. Anyway, I want to get into, because it's the final segment and we only have about 20 minutes left, I want to get into this audio clip, and I'm going to play, this is from Dateline back in the day, okay, and again, it's obviously stuff like this is always watered down, but In fact, you're going to somebody I've mentioned. He was still alive at the time. You're going to hear them talk to him. Gary Webb. This drew so much attention, and they'll say that oh, Gary killed himself. He was despondent. Blah blah. I think this drew too much attention to this reality that the CIA was slinging crack, and it just created too much of the public noticing at that time, and obviously he had to go amongst other people dying too. But anyway, and I know it's a bit watered down, but you need to hear at least what was aired, and then I'll interject here and there. Anyway, this is from I think back in the 90s. This is Dateline, and this is them talking about. It's the two pieces, and you'll hear them, get into everything, and you'll hear them talk to Freeway Ricky Ross, and but it's just more evidence that not only does the CIA deal drugs, but more importantly, as I've talked about before, this is the CIA slinging crack, and this is evidence that the CIA targeted the black community with crack. Because cocaine at the time was a rich white man's drug. So the only way to target it to the black community was to sell it for $5 a rock, for crack rock. If you freebase it and turn it into crack, you make little crack rocks out of it. And by the way, that's chemistry. That's not some junkie in an alleyway who's looking for a fix, suddenly has this epiphany. Okay, really? Really? Okay. Anyway, they realized that we can't sell these guys $50 or $100 bags of cocaine, but we can sell them crack rock, $5 a bag. It wasn't these drug dealers that figured out how much to market this stuff for and everything else. This is number crunchers and people in suits that figure this stuff out. Let's be real. What was his name? I can't remember his name in New Jack City. Wesley Snipes' his name, his character. And, he makes reference. He's like, oh, come on, you think I'm the biggest criminal? The government's the biggest criminal. Anyway, here we go.
Here is Jane Pauley.
A super secret organization like the CIA is going to have secrets. But this sounded too bizarre to be true. Yet there it was, in print, in a respected newspaper. The accusation that the crack epidemic, which ravaged this country's cities, was spread with help from a secret army linked to the CIA. As you may recall, the story set off a firestorm of controversy. Then last month, a surprising twist. The newspaper which had first published this astounding story started to back away from it. Is the story true or not? Tonight, Bob McEwen takes a second look.
We are sick and tired of your excuses.
And I hope that you'll help to put an end to it, because we are tired and we're hurt and we're angry.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
It was an American first. The director of the CIA, one of the country's most secretive institutions, facing the public at a town meeting in South Central Los Angeles.
By the way, that was Michael Rupert that stood up. I'm going to repost this article that I have. It's on his website called From the Wilderness. And I'm going to repost it. If I could find it, it would be lovely right now. Of course, Popeye, that's lovely when you reference stuff. And you don't have it right in front of you, and you have so many things open. Oh, it's because I probably put it right over here in front of you. Very good. FromTheWilderness.com. In fact, I'll put a link for it in the chat room. You could probably just Google this. Blacks were targeted for CIA cocaine. It can be proven by Michael C. Rupert. That was the guy that you heard say, when I was in the LAPD, they were, CIA bringing in drugs, blah, 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 and the room went berserk. I'll drop the link. I'm going to repost it on federaljack.com, but it's from Michael C. Rupert. Go read his book, Crossing the Rubicon. Great book. He's written a couple other books, but Crossing the Rubicon is it's huge, filled with information. Anyway, that's the man that you heard there. Back to the video.
This information turns up wrongdoing. If it turns up wrongdoing, we will bring the people to justice and make them accountable.
An extraordinary event in response to an extraordinary accusation that people working with the CIA had a hand in sparking the crack epidemic that has devastated America's inner cities. Those charges came from this man, reporter Gary Webb of the San Jose Mercury News. He became one of the most talked about journalists in the country, his story the most controversial of the past year, because after investigating the origins of the crack epidemic, he claimed he found a link leading right to the CIA.
Men who were working for the CIA's army were responsible for bringing all that cocaine into Los Angeles that sparked the crack epidemic.
The CIA's army, Webb says, were the Contras, the anti-communist rebels fighting the government of Nicaragua back in the 1980s, an army founded and funded by the CIA. Webb wrote that some Contra supporters smuggled cocaine to America to raise money for their cause.
The CIA has been bringing drugs into this country.
As then CIA Director John Deutsch discovered, it's an accusation that rings true for many, especially for some in the African American community. And Webb's story has taken on a life of its own.
And Gary,
on the talk show circuit and the internet, some have even gone beyond Webb's charges to accuse the CIA of conspiring to target young African Americans.
Was the CIA willing to poison our cities and crack cocaine?
On the basis of what you learned, do you believe that there was a conscious decision, a meeting where someone sat down and said, we're going to poison the youth of Black America and here's how we're going to do it?
No, I don't. These guys were looking to raise money, and I don't think it mattered to them where they did it. They just went where they could raise the money.
That's Gary Webb that was talking. Now, I'll stop it there for a second. I do think that they targeted the black community. In fact, I know they targeted the black community. As I said, cocaine was a rich white man's drug, but $5 crack rocks weren't. And it's a way to drag them down. Look at the black community back in the 50s and the 60s. Look at the leaders they had. Martin Luther King Jr. You wonder why they shot him? How different do you think things would be? Do you think that there'd be rappers running around rapping about bitches and hoes? Do you think people like Bill Cosby, and although I don't get along with everything, I don't really like everything Bill Cosby says, and he could be racist himself. He was right when he chastised black parents for not raising their kids right and allowing their allowing their kids to walk around with their pants around their ankles. And he chastised kids for walking around with their pants around their ankles. And what happened? Suddenly he got all these people coming out against him. I think if I remember correctly, he had some sexual harassment charges from some woman come out of nowhere, right? If Martin Luther King Jr. and people of his ilk were alive and in charge, do you think that this crack epidemic could have been possible? If you look at the bigger picture, if you understand things like the King Alfred plan, whether it's fictional or not, it's realistic enough and matches the modern-day FEMA camp rules, or plans, I should say. But if you notice, even in Rex 84, who were the first people they round up? Black people. So don't tell me that the black community is not targeted, or the Latin community, or middle-class white people. They are. Of course they are, or the middle class in general. Remember, they break everybody up into small segments. They target it. It's easier to target communities one by one by one, right? You have to think like they do, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, back to the audio.
Gary Webb says his stories were largely based on the testimony of a drug dealer with Contra connections who became a U.S. government witness. But 9 months after the series was published, the controversy continues. Some of the heavyweights of American journalism have examined Webb's work and found it reckless, often wrong. Just this week, Webb was pulled off the CIA story after his own executive editor admitted the articles oversimplified the origins of the crack epidemic and left out important conflicting evidence. He also wrote, I feel that we did not have proof that top CIA officials knew.
But despite the evidence to the contrary, Gary Webb insists his stories were substantially accurate. And many Americans do seem willing to believe that their own government could have been involved in drug smuggling. So was the U.S. government involved in any way? Dateline decided to take a second look.
Crack use spread like wildfire in the early 1980s. And in Los Angeles, a drug dealer known as Freeway Ricky Ross was in the middle of it. Prosecutors called Ross the Walmart of crack. He made millions in the early 80s dealing to Los Angeles street gangs. Police say he was among the first to take expensive cocaine powder and cook it into low-cost, highly addictive crack, then distribute it through the gangs. Webb says Freeway Ricky helped trigger an epidemic of human misery.
It's destroyed our community. All the black men are in prison, most of us.
Rick Ross is now serving a life sentence for cocaine distribution.
The women are still strung on the drugs, kids without fathers, without mothers.
And honestly, how much responsibility do you have for that?
A lot. A lot of it was my fault. I played the game.
Police in Los Angeles say he virtually cornered the crack market, thanks to a steady supply of cheap cocaine. A pipeline so good that Ross was able to introduce crack to other cities, using his gang contacts, and to make himself, he says, a very rich man.
6 shots fired, tag 8.
On your best day, how much money did you see?
A couple million, 2, 3 maybe.
On a day?
On a good day.
How many days like that were there?
A few. Quite a few.
Rick Ross's drug supplier did have connections to the Contras. Dateline has been able to confirm that from former Contra leader Eden Pastora. And Pastora admits he received some aid from that drug supplier. But Pastora says he was not aware of any CIA drug connection. So we asked Gary Webb, where is the evidence the CIA knew of any drug dealing?
You have to define the CIA. If you're saying that people who are working with the CIA know they were doing it, yeah. Did the director of the Central Intelligence Agency know this? I don't know.
This is nonsense.
Now retired, Dewey Claridge was the CIA's man in charge of Central America in the early 80s. Yes. He insists the agency had nothing to do with any drug trafficking or with any cover-up.
Oh, except for CIA planes crashing in other countries loaded with cocaine and weapons. You search engine that. But remember, this is, again, from the 90s.
Oh, don't give me the conspiracy bullshit. Come on, you're a more intelligent man than that.
Oh, personal attacks? Ad hominem, sir.
Come on. I mean, come on. This there has never been a conspiracy in this country.
Never?
Really, sir? People get charged with it every day. He just lied to you. There's never been a conspiracy in this country, so 2 or more people have never gotten together to do something bad in this country? Really, sir? Really? Really? Dateline. Got anything to say? You gonna hold him accountable?
Gary Webb's version of events may be wrong, but in the mid-1980s, there was a high-level White House conspiracy called Iran-Contra.
Drugs and gun smuggling, connection. And I like how they attack Gary Webb. Gary Webb was wrong. His version may be wrong. Gary Webb was not wrong. And it was actually worse than he even thought. But he was not wrong.
Whatever you believe, Gary Webb's stories have revived interest in an issue that's been simmering since Ronald Reagan was at the White House. Were U.S. government officials aware of drug smuggling in and around the Contra movement? And did they simply choose to ignore it? One U.S. senator says, absolutely.
There's no question in my mind there is a complicity in the flow of drugs into this country, period.
A Senate investigation led.
Yeah, and the best part is, you know who said that? Just in case people didn't catch the voice, it's John Kerry. Hey, John, you still You still going after the CIA for drug smuggling? What? What? Smuggling arms and drugs in Benghazi? What? Huh?
By John Kerry of Massachusetts, found that individuals who provided support for the Contras were involved in drug trafficking, and that one or another agency of the U.S. government had information regarding the involvement, either while it was occurring or immediately thereafter. Incredibly, according to Senator Kerry, smugglers even used the U.S. government's own airlift operation at El Salvador's Ilopango airport to get cocaine back across the American border. This drug enforcement agent patrolled that same airport in the mid-'80s.
It was just nonstop traffic coming and going, and nobody ever inspected their planes or their cargo or whatever.
Cele Castillo told Dateline he observed rampant drug smuggling at that airport.
Well, what we had was that we had Contra pilots flying out of Ilopango, smuggling drugs into the U.S., cocaine specifically.
He claims the smuggling was so open it had to be condoned by the U.S. government. Castillo says planes would arrive filled with supplies for the Contras, then leave carrying cocaine for America, bound for military airfields in Florida and Texas, offloaded out of sight of the law, then shipped to California and other points in the U.S. And there's more. Castillo says when he reported all of this to his bosses at the DEA, he was told to ignore it.
So you were told point blank? Point blank, stay away from it. It's a covert operation being run by the White House.
In a letter to Dateline, the Drug Enforcement Administration said it has vigorously investigated, and no evidence has ever been found to substantiate Mr. Castillo's charges. As for the CIA, it's denied ever aiding or condoning drug smuggling.
Reports were reaching the highest councils of our government, in the White House and in the Justice Department. There is no question of that. I can document that.
The White House and Justice Department disputed Kerry's report at the time, but he still believes some government officials turned a blind eye towards drug dealing in the mid-1980s, after the time at the heart of Gary Webb's stories. There were no indictments or prosecutions, and ultimately those allegations of drug smuggling became just a footnote in the scandal known as Iran-Contra. According to Kerry, at the time, American officials were more afraid of the evils of communism than the ravages of crack cocaine.
I'll tell you, South Central Los Angeles and every other city in America are owed an explanation. People knew that drug trafficking was getting mixed up in the flow of weapons. People knew there were bad types involved in this operation. They didn't turn off the spigot. That's plain and simple.
The CIA is reviewing the charges made by Webb and says it will conclude its investigation by the end of the year. The House Select Committee on Intelligence says it will issue its own report and that its investigation will not be affected by the Mercury News' reevaluation of its series.
Now, you can go look up both those reports for yourself. Obviously, Gary Webb is dead now. Supposedly shot himself. Twice. In the back of the head. Some reports say it was a .45. Some say it was a pump shotgun. Either way, it's pretty hard to shoot yourself in the back of the head twice, but I digress. They did target the black people in the 80s, the black community, with crack. Without a shadow of a doubt, black people were targeted in the 80s. And, you know, late 70s, early 80s. Without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm sure someone's going to message me and tell me that that pissed them off and they didn't like that or whatnot. Or I lose credibility. I saw that comment the other day that I lose credibility when I say without a shadow of a doubt. Well, there is no doubt. The CIA did it. And if they were running drugs back in the 80s, it means they're probably still doing it today. By the way, where's Senator Kerry? Where's that huge investigation into drug running and smuggling and dealing and all that by the government in the 80s? Oh, Senator Kerry's... Where are you now? Skull and Bones? Skull and Bones? Kerry? Where are you now? Whoa. What? Where do you work? Huh? Oh, you got Hillary's old job. Secretary of State Kerry now. Think he still has anything to worry about with the drug dealing? Think he's still pissed off about it? Still think he's against it? Maybe we should ask him. start an email campaign about that. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I love you all. Catch you all again live tomorrow night. Research, research, research. Become autodidacts. Love you all.